I tried to be nice with a little tap. Nobody paid attention. So, okay. Dr. Hawkins, could you open us with prayer, please, sir? What's your number? 3? You're on.
Okay, thank you, sir. Please bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we gather here today to do the work for the people of Georgia. Please guide us into making the right decisions and help us for a better tomorrow for all citizens. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. I hope everyone feels safe. If you don't feel safe today, you got problems. Yeah. Okay, everybody received one of those at first desk that we met. That's the rules we're going to go by. This is not a standing committee, but all this was taken out of the official rules form. Now, a couple of things. I may make some people mad, but I really don't care. And some of them will be watching on TV, I hope. Y'all know this last session on day 26, 27, and 28, we passed 108 bills. Those 3 days, 2 days before crossover and crossover, 108 bills. Now, if a bill was that important that it just had to get passed, why wouldn't it drop on day 1, 2, 3, or 4? Yo, don't look, don't. I'm not going to call on you. And there were 64 days that were 64 bills that was passed on crossover. Now, I'm sure y'all enjoy staying till midnight when the Senate's gone at 5 or 6 o'clock. So there's some things we need to talk about a little bit. Be sure that when you fill out the form, now I'm talking to everybody who's listening and everything, be sure there's some information on there worth reading. You know, we return them back in, let you rewrite it, put some more information, because I don't know what the world you have to talking about. And if it's a department bill, please reference the department that's asking for it. You know, I had a conversation this morning with an organization, and once I found out who was pushing that particular bill, it would have passed day 1. But I didn't know about it till today. So be sure to have the right information and the necessary information on there for us to take a look at that bill. Yeah, we read them, but be sure that we have the information on who's sponsoring this kind of stuff. Now, I really got a pet peeve now that's going to make some people really mad. Good. When all of y'all are committee chairs or in leadership, when you hold a committee meeting, please tell the person who's going to be sponsoring a bill before your committee that you're holding that meeting. And under no circumstances do you pass the bill without the sponsor there. That's happened. So the person didn't know until somebody else approached them about that you had to turn in this little form that you turned in at the Rules Committee. They did not know that they had potential of being brought before the Rules Committee or the Committee on Rules to present their bill just because they knew absolutely nothing about what was going on. That's unacceptable. Now, I'm not going to say some other things, but we'll get started. Who's Chairman Corbett? You're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 119. I think it's the third one down on the blue sheet. LC 393568. This bill was brought to me by the AAA. Brought this bill. They're asking, it deals with our move over law, in Georgia, presently as the Georgia law is written, it only applies to emergency vehicles, towing carriers, vehicles, and public utility vehicles with flashing lights, rotating or oscillating lights, but this does not protect a disabled motorist. So what we're doing with this bill is expand it to anybody with flashing lights that's broke down beside the road. The same protection, you have to either slow down or move over. Every year, or in 2019, there was 44 first responders killed out on the road, but every year almost 350 motorists are killed, disabled motorists are killed on the road. So this is just extending the same rights to a disabled motorist, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Jaspers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just have a quick question. So would this extend the coverage to companies that are protecting construction workers on sites? There's all sorts of different ones that have flashing lights, people to help you stop when they're working on two-lane roads, or on our interstates also.
Yeah, anybody with rotating lights, flashing lights on the, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's cleared up, but over here, when a person is stopped beside the road, are there any provisions for our drivers to get as far over as they can? Because by adding this, we're already bumper to bumper for folk who just stop to say, hey, can we move them over some? Because it's tough, especially on the southern part of I-75 headed to Savannah, and I be in a hurry sometimes, but just move folk over the provisions, because some folks stop the minute the car bark, they stop.
Yeah. And I don't know how you educate the public to do that. That should be common sense, but there's a lack of that anymore, seems like.
Well, if what he's saying is true, there's an article out there written called "The Death of Common Sense," so you need to read it. Okay. All right. Anyone else have a question on 119? Okay, 120, Mr. Corbett.
All right, 120, which I think is the fourth one down, LC 393525. This is just cleanup language from Department of Driver Services come with this bill. There's House Bill 799, which was passed in 2020. It removed the language that prohibited someone charged with DUI drugs from receiving an early reinstatement or limited driving permit. However, they did not put the permissive language in the bill, which was inadvertently omitted. Therefore, the law does not prohibit driver services from providing someone with a suspended license with limited driving permit, but it also does not explicitly state that the DDS can provide a limited driving permit. So this is just cleanup language for them, just codifying the permissive language for them to do this.
Okay, from what I understand, there's about 100,000 people in the state that unless this goes into effect, they may be out of a job, not be able to pay child support,
that is
pay their bills, and also this would allow them to drive back and forth to work.
Yeah, there's another bill we should have next week. There's 119,000 for lack of child support, but it's absolutely true, Mr. Chairman. It allows them to be able to at least from home to work, and limited, and that's at the discretion of the judge. First offense only.
Okay. Any questions? Oh, Chairman Knight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're busy, Chairman Corbett, this year. A lot of motor vehicle issues. My question regards, and it's more of a comment and maybe a thought, but in regards to the commercial motor vehicles and the motor carrier stuff, I know we're updating the state code to reflect the January 123 federal regulations. Have we looked at that, those regulations, and maybe looked at some of the things that those federal regulations are requiring that maybe exempt, maybe like local governments, as far as the disparity in pulling over private businesses and vehicles versus an exemption for the same local government vehicle?
I have not, but I'd love to get with you, and we'll talk about it and see if there's some area we can work
So
on.
just a big issue I know that I hear a lot from our locals and our local businesses about the onerous regulations and some of the things that are happening on our
Oh, yeah, if you got that DOT sticker, you're a target. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, no more questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will pass on that advice you had earlier to that chairman that did that and make sure that doesn't happen again.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Crow. House Bill 139. I'm reading this right?
Yes, sir. House Bill 139, LCE 491160. This is one of those aforementioned bills from last year that got out of the House but not through the Senate. So it's a GBI bill, and what this does, currently sworn law enforcement officers who are testifying for the prosecution in a criminal case are protected from having to give their personal information, their private home address, date of birth, and personal phone number to the defense as part of a witness list and discovery. The crime scene technicians, lab scientists, and other non-sworn employees that would be testifying in a case are not afforded those same protections. And so what this does is it adds them to the code so that those non-sworn personnel are given the same protections and the same rights of privacy as sworn officers are.
Okay. Mr. Beverly.
Bill, can you help me to understand who is a non-sworn employee? Because you said, you mentioned a few folk, but it doesn't specifically say it, especially line 63. So who are you referring to in line 63 as a non-sworn employee? You mentioned a couple, but it's not explicitly stated in this bill.
No, sir, it is not. A non-sworn employee could be any person who's not a sworn, post-certified law enforcement officer that works for an agency. This question came up in
Couldn't it be
committee.
a firefighter, EMT?
No, sir, it's a law
Okay.
enforcement agency.
What's that?
A law enforcement agency. It
Okay.
says in here, non-sworn employee of a law enforcement agency. The primary people that it would be covering would be your crime scene technicians, GBI, or local law enforcement crime scene technicians, and your lab scientists, DNA scientists, and folks that do the tests at the crime lab. Is ideally who they're looking at, but there are a number of non-sworn employees. The likelihood of any of those other employees, say a janitor or a clerk or something like that, they wouldn't be called to testify on behalf of the prosecution in a criminal case. So it's going to be mostly your scientists and your crime scene technicians.
So you're going to give them, if this doesn't pass, they can still be allowed to get the phone number, address, all this kind of information about the individual.
Yes, sir. And the concern is that, you know, as crime scene data and lab DNA data and things like that becomes more prevalent, that's a critical part of a prosecution. So they could become a target, you know, for a defendant who's looking to not be prosecuted.
Mr. Leader.
Yes, follow-up question.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The question is, how far-reaching can this be? Because, you know, someone gets a little older, maybe some new evidence comes up, the folk who are trying to prosecute a case can't get in contact with these folk if it's a non-sworn employee. Like, how far, is it a time horizon on this? And then how far-reaching will it be?
So that was a concern that was brought up last year. I actually worked with PAC and GACTL. They had that concern about not being able to contact the employees after they've left employment if they weren't any longer there. And this requires them to provide their new contact information to their former agency, so they have to be able to get in contact with them.
Okay, is that, excuse me, Mr. Chair, last question, is that somewhere explicitly stated in this bill?
Yes, sir. Line 50, it says any formerly employed or retired law enforcement officer may use the address, phone number of the last agency where he or she was employed. And then it goes on to say that if they use that this section constitutes a waiver of claim that they were not served properly. So the onus is on that person to make sure they're able to be contacted through their former agency. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative, that last exchange was kind of along the lines of what I wanted to ask you about. Isn't it true that this bill would actually help both prosecutors and other attorneys involved with cases to effectuate service in these circumstances so that the case can proceed and the witnesses are there available for court?
Yes, sir. That was actually an issue with former law enforcement sworn personnel, too, that had moved on to another agency. And so this covers both sworn and non-sworn personnel so that both sides of the prosecution and defense can contact those people who have moved on to a different agency.
Yes, sir. Good work. Thank you.
Chairman Martin.
So I'm just saying, one is sworn and then this, if you're not, why wouldn't we just say all employees of a law enforcement agency? I mean, you're either sworn or you're not sworn. I'm just curious.
Yes, sir. That's a good question because the bill, the law already had law enforcement personnel, so we just went back and added or non-sworn employee of a law enforcement agency. So,
Just trying to make it simpler, Mr. Chairman. This is, if you're either are sworn or not sworn, there's not levels of sworn. If we did all employees, it would seem to be.
From what I
easier.
understand, this is going to bring in the rest of the folks.
That's my, yes, sir, that's my thing. So you just say all employees, and it appears, isn't it true, it appears when you're talking about the non-sworn that there's a third group. That, there's the sworn employees and the non-sworn, then there's a third group, as opposed to just saying all, but I'll yield to the gentleman's. All employees are covered.
this would in fact cover, I mean, there's only two categories, sworn and non-sworn. Yes, sir, you are correct. Why Legislative Council chose to go this route with the language, I'm not 100% sure, but I think because it already had a law enforcement officer, they wanted to also explicitly state non-sworn as well instead of just saying all employees.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
Mr. Leverett, we even though you're committee chair, we've already heard your bill.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm enjoying myself so much yesterday.
Well, do you have any changes to your bill?
I don't at this point.
Oh, okay, well, good. You can leave then. Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Barton, are you going to be a gentleman and let Miss Daniel in front of you? Very good. Thank you, sir. Ms. Daniel has House Bill 175.
That's right. And it is a basic bill. It is the yearly bill for the motor carrier compliance codification. It literally just updates the date every year, so hopefully that's all the description you need, I think.
Well, no, I'm not going to call on that. I'm going to be a lot nicer to you in here than they are when you get on the floor.
Okay.
They're going to ask you all kind of crazy questions. And remember, there's a statement that's every freshman should learn. Mr. Speaker, I yield the well. Important statement. And there's some older legislators, well, more senior legislators here who should learn the same words. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
That's it.
That's it.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Representative Barton.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I got House Bill 183. It's the Department of Revenue bill. This is a repeat from last year. We passed it in the House. It made it through the committee and rules in the Senate, but got clogged up at the end. So back here to repeat it again. The LC number is LC 39624. And this bill pretty much just changes the verbiage from temporary license plate to temporary operating permit. And the reason why they're doing it is because the tax commissioners, the auto dealers, and the Department of Revenue, they call them tops. And so this just makes it to where everybody's saying the same thing and legally saying the same thing. So that's pretty much all they're doing. They're just calling them tops. Instead of temporary license plate, it's a temporary operating permit. And it's just a cleanup bill for the Department of Revenue.
Okay. Well, I don't see any questions. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank y'all.
All right. Now remember, we're going to set the calendar for day 16. That means we have 13 days, counting today, for crossover or something like that. I really need to tell all the committee chair, I'm probably going to limit your committee to 2 bills a session. It would be nice if I could say that. It would really make my day if I could say that. Because we've got some that, the top 10 goes anywhere from 40-something down to 11 for this past session. So, but we're going to put 3 or 4 on for tomorrow, and then we'll meet tomorrow to set Monday's calendar. But remember, please, on these reports and on the analyst report, read those to be sure that they say everything your bill says and you want it to say. All right. Do I hear a move on House Bill 119? Got a move and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. It's on. House Bill 120. Do I hear a move? Got a move and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. House Bill 175. Do I hear a move? Move. It's on. House Bill 183. Do I hear a move? All right. Now all these under modified structure. Modified structure. All 4 of these bills under modified structure. All right. Thank y'all. We'll